last night for those of you, because I know this is a statewide academy, for those of you in other areas that may have more strict interpretation from the county health department of these reopening policies. The emergency order also said that basically what the governor says goes. And so he's exerting his authority under the Georgia Constitution to say that this executive order and the reopening order and process will supersede or control over any conflicting county or city ordinance.
Rich, as a follow-up question to when we do reopen, I'm thinking here, because we're all blazing a trail together. In terms of documenting our precautions, might I write down in a simple procedure, would be a clinic specific document what the procedures are, and then refer to that procedure in each patient entry, that procedure, and I can name it, was followed, rather than trying to document for each individual patient. That would get really laborious.
It would get really laborious, and you raise a good point, Dr. Hayden. I think it really the kind of establishing the new standard of care would be twofold. The first is you would adopt that policy, and we're happy to talk with Dr. Barnett about how we can draft up a template one and send it out to members of the academy. I think that would be a good starting place because the CDC guidelines and the governor's order on precautions to take in reopening are not necessarily integrated, so we can kind of help put that together. But that's the first thing, is adopt that policy just by signing it and making it have an effective date. And the second is, I agree, referring to it in the patient chart may be important, but that may not ultimately be necessary. I mean, for example, you've had to deal with bloodborne pathogen rules from OSHA for years. You don't necessarily document in every chart. Well, we followed OSHA on BBP rules on this particular visit, and so it may be just enough to adopt the policy. Part of what I was getting to, though, earlier, in terms of encouraging patients to come back once you reopen, because if you build it, they will come, may be different now. I mean, I think even in the space of 6 weeks, the entire nation has had a change of mentality about how they go places and conduct normal activities. Certainly in a room, in a chiropractic office where you have an open treatment area, folks may be hesitant. So I would think that you would use that not only in your publications about letting folks you're reopened, but I would post those policy and procedure. I would post that so everybody can see, here's what we're doing. Delta, for example, Delta Airlines has been great about that. Saying, here's what we do to every airplane between flights and before the first flight of every day, and they put it up right there in the jetway. I think that kind of precaution would really be helpful in the offices too. Sarah, I see you nodding. Do you have any thoughts to add about that?
Yeah, I agree. Posting signage of these are all the rules we follow, I think would be helpful. My only concern with documenting specific practices is if you leave something out in the notes, that could go against you. So I think it might be better to just kind of have a standard, these are the rules that we follow in all of our patient care, as opposed to quickly listing it out each time.
That's a great point. Great point and great question, though.
How would you suggest addressing our preparations in social media? In other words, many people on Facebook, I know I'm trying to communicate with patients on Facebook about when we're going to reopen. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest, or would you suggest talking about the procedures that we're going to enact on social media?
I think a Facebook post announcing that you've adopted new policies and maybe a link to those policies makes a lot of sense. especially if you can get those policies and procedures in digital format and just put them on your practice's website. That way everybody can know what the deal is even before they get in their car and come to your office.
Right.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And frankly, I mentioned Delta because I receive messages from Ed Bastian, the president of Delta, on a regular basis about all that it's doing to keep airplanes clean. That's part of Delta's social media strategy, and I think it makes sense to make that a part of yours as well. Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, however you communicate regularly with your patients, especially email, that policy should be a part of that communication. It's a great point. And notice here I've moved on to slide 32 with just kind of more detail about what those policies would be. And we're happy to put this in some kind of template for members of the Academy.
That would be super.
I think this is the last slide. As you can see, it's my smiling face back when the days before the virus and maybe a little less gray hair. It has been our pleasure to speak with you all this afternoon. Do we have any additional questions before we adjourn?
I do, Rich. This is Dr. Rhodes again. Paula Rhodes, question about the telemedicine. I may have missed that because I came in late. What are the basic guidelines as I do a functional medicine, functional neurology kind of practice, and I can do follow-up care with my patients via telemedicine? What kind of things do I need to keep in mind for that?
Really twofold. The first is that HIPAA has been an obstacle to a good active telemedicine practice, and that HIPAA obstacle has been removed in March, so that now the technology you can use for telemedicine, I guess your options are much greater, including FaceTime or Skype, using a laptop or a phone or a tablet. That's all kind of fair game under HIPAA, and really applies to all payers that are allowing those kinds of treatments to be covered services. The second is that if you are Medicare enrolling, CMS has waived a good bit of the requirements for telehealth and expanded the different services that you can provide via telehealth. It only applies to Medicare, but it is, I think, going to be instructive for payers that the whole industry is going to move in that direction. As I mentioned, I think the mentality of Americans has changed in 6 weeks. And so people are going to start demanding telehealth services just in the name of not wanting to go anywhere and get sick. And commercial insurance companies are going to have to accommodate that. The last thing, Dr. Rhodes, is that the Georgia Board of Chiropractic Examiners has not spoken on this yet. So we still need some guidance from the board on exactly what the scope of practice looks like for chiropractors using telehealth. And hopefully we'll be getting that sometime soon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, Dr. Hayden, I know as Dr. Barnett mentioned, we are on folks' lunch hour typically, so we run about 5 minutes over, but I think it's been great handling these additional questions. I would suggest if we have any additional, you can email me directly or email Dr. Hayden or Dr. Barnett. They'll get to us and we'll make sure we get y'all an answer.
Great. And Rich, and on behalf of the Academy, we want to thank you and Sarah and Zeke, and a special roll tide to you, Rich.
I appreciate that. Roll tide.
For those of yeah,
it's hard to tell if that was an actual dog or just a Georgia Bulldog fan, but either way.
Yeah, they're both unruly. Anyway,
right.
For those of you who are not members of the Academy, we are a new kid on the block. We are an organization of chiropractors who are evidence-based and who are committed to the idea that our profession deserves a fully integrated seat at the healthcare table. Dr. Kinney, do you want to come in and say a word or two? He's not expecting this.
No, that roll tide, I had to leave for a minute of nausea, but after that, I'm good. No, we're glad to have everybody on the call today, and it's www.academydoctors.com. Please go check it out. And if you're evidence-based, we would love to have you if you're willing to adhere to an evidence-based protocol and the scientific approach to the practice of chiropractic. We welcome your applications, and we're actually going to waive membership fees, other than if you want to participate in our health insurance program. But other than that, we're just because of the coronavirus pandemic, we're actually waiving our membership fees for the rest of this year. Just have everybody join up and let's form a coalition of folks who are evidence and scientifically based, and would love to have y'all.
And follow us on Facebook.
Dr. Hayden, thank you again. And Dr. Barnett, we sure appreciate the opportunity. We want to thank our sponsors today, and thank you all so much again for the opportunity to go through this information with you. We look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you.
All right.